Welcome, car lovers. For nearly half a century, the Toyota Camry has been the silent butler of the automotive world. It does not shout, it does not boast, and it certainly does not seek the spotlight. It simply exists, performing its duties with a level of stoic competence that would make a Victorian valet blush. But as we stand here in the early days of 2026, looking at this, the new Camry Prime, one must ask a difficult question of legacy. Has the world's most dependable servant finally traded its white gloves for a silicon chip? It doesn't quite understand. For decades, the Camry was the benchmark for a specific kind of understated excellence. It was the car you bought when you had reached a point in life where you no longer felt the need to prove anything to your neighbors. You didn't buy it for the badge, and you certainly didn't buy it for the thrills. You bought it because you knew, with a certainty usually reserved for the rising of the sun, that it would start every morning for the next 20 years. To understand where we are going with this new, electrified iteration, we must first look back at where we have been. Many of you will remember the 1992 Camry, the Afif 10. It was an engineering marvel, not because it was fast, but because it was built to a standard that seemed frankly unnecessary for a family sedan. The doors closed with a thud that suggested the car had been carved from a single block of granite. The plastics were soft, the gaps between the panels were microscopic, and the engines were so quiet you often had to check the tachometer to see if they were actually running. It was, in many ways, a Lexus with a more modest price tag. It represented the good old days of motoring, a time when quality was measured in longevity rather than the number of pixels on a dashboard. Since then, the Camry has navigated the decades with varying degrees of success, occasionally flirting with aggressive styling that didn't quite suit its humble character. But now, Toyota claims to have achieved something remarkable: a plug-in hybrid with a 100-mile electric range. If true, this would be a formidable achievement. But as we know, the gap between a manufacturer's brochure and the harsh reality of a Tuesday morning in January is often wide enough to drive a bus through. Let us begin with the exterior. In recent years, Toyota's designers have seemed somewhat restless, as if they were tired of being told their cars looked like refrigerators. With this 2026 model, they have attempted to marry the dignity of a sedan with the fluidity of a sculpture. The silhouette is elongated, the roofline tapering gracefully toward the rear in a way that suggests a sense of motion even when the car is stationary. The proportions are balanced, avoiding the awkward, bottom-heavy look that plagues so many modern hybrids burdened by heavy batteries. It is not cool in the way a teenager might use the word. Rather, it possesses a certain presence. It is a handsome object, though I find the sheer number of creases along the flanks a bit fussy. One misses the clean architectural lines of the 90s, where a single stroke of a pen was enough to define a car's character. Here, there is a lot of theater, but the overall shape remains dignified. It does not scream for attention, but it does command a second look. However, the true test of any car designed for the long haul is the interior. For a man of a certain age, the modern car cabin has become a hostile environment, a place of glowing screens, haptic sliders, and menus buried within menus. Stepping into the 2026 Camry Prime, there is a palpable sense of relief. Toyota has, quite remarkably, listened to reason. While there is a central screen, an inevitability in this digital age, it does not dominate the landscape like a television set bolted to the dashboard. More importantly, the engineers have retained the physical buttons for the climate control and a proper knurled dial for the volume. There is a tactile honesty here that is sorely lacking in its European competitors. You can adjust the temperature without taking your eyes off the road, and you can change the radio station without needing a degree in computer science. That said, not all is perfect. While the layout is exemplary, some of the materials leave something to be desired. The Softex upholstery is perfectly adequate, but it lacks the rich, organic aroma of proper hide. And if you reach down below the line of sight, you will encounter plastics that feel somewhat thin and brittle. A reminder that even in a flagship model, the accountants are never far away. The seats, however, are a triumph. They are broad, supportive, and devoid of the aggressive bolstering that seems designed for a racing driver rather than a human being. It is a cabin built for the reality of a two-hour commute, not a lap of the Nürburgring, and for that, we should be grateful. Now, we must address the elephant in the room, that 100-mile electric range for a plug. In hybrid, this is a significant claim. Most vehicles in this class manage 30 or perhaps 40 miles before the internal combustion engine is forced to wake up and assist. To reach 100 miles suggests a leap in battery density or a level of efficiency that verges on the miraculous. In practice, on a cold morning with the heaters running and the lights on, that figure will inevitably shrink. Yet, even if the real-world range is closer to 80 miles, the implications are profound. It means that for the vast majority of your life, this is an electric car. You could go months without ever visiting a petrol station, sparing yourself the indignity of overpriced coffee and the smell of diesel on your shoes. But what happens when the battery is depleted? This is where the engineering truth reveals itself. The transition from electric power to the gasoline engine is, I am pleased to report, almost imperceptible. There is no coarse vibration, no sudden surge of noise. It is a seamless mechanical handoff. The engine itself is a 4-cylinder unit that prioritizes thermal efficiency over raw power. It is not a fast car. If you plant your foot, there is a momentary pause as the CVT transmission finds its footing, followed by a steady, if uninspiring, increase in velocity. But to complain about a Camry's lack of speed is like complaining that a grandfather clock isn't a very good stopwatch. It misses the point entirely. The drive is defined by a singular quality: serenity. The suspension has been tuned with a level of sophistication that suggests the engineers actually spent time driving on broken pavement. It does not crash over potholes, it smothers them. At 70 miles per h-hour on the motorway, the cabin is a sanctuary of silence. There is very little wind noise, and the tire roar is kept at a respectful distance. This is a car that lowers your heart rate. It is predictable, stable, and utterly unruffled by crosswinds or heavy rain. The steering is light, perhaps a bit too light for my tastes, but it is precise enough to place the car exactly where you want it. It is an effortless machine to operate, which, at the end of a long day, is a luxury far more valuable than a 0 to 60 time. However, we must apply the filter of cynicism to the technology that underpins this experience. Toyota has loaded the Prime with an array of driver assistance features. It will nudge you back into your lane. It will beep if it thinks you aren't paying attention, and it will essentially drive itself in slow-moving traffic. While impressive, one cannot help but feel that we are losing something in the process. The car is constantly watching you, judging you, and occasionally countermanding your inputs. It is a nannying influence that can, at times, become tiresome. One longs for a simple off switch that actually stays off, rather than a system that resets itself every time you cycle the ignition. Furthermore, we must consider the long-term reality of such a complex machine. The original Camrys were simple things. You changed the oil, you changed the spark plugs, and they lasted forever. This 2026 Prime is a rolling laboratory of high-voltage electronics, sophisticated cooling systems for the battery pack, and a mountain of software code. In 15 years, when a sensor fails or a battery cell loses its capacity, will this car be an engineering marvel or a very expensive paperweight? This is the concern that haunts the modern buyer. We are trading the mechanical simplicity of the past for the digital convenience of the present, and only time will tell if the bargain was worth it. So we come to the final verdict. Is the 2026 Toyota Camry Prime a future classic? To be honest, no, it is not a car that will be pampered in a climate, controlled garage, or auctioned for vast sums at Pebble Beach in 50 years. It is a tool, but it is perhaps the finest tool of its kind ever devised. It takes the anxiety of the electric revolution and coats it in a thick layer of traditional Japanese reliability. It offers the silence and economy of an EV without the range Tetris required by a purely battery-powered vehicle. If you are a man who values the truth of engineering over the hype of a marketing department, the Camry Prime is a difficult car to ignore. It does not try to be a sports car, and it does not try to be a status symbol. It is an honest, exceptionally well-built sedan that respects your time and your intelligence. It avoids the gimmicks that define so many of its contemporaries, opting instead for usability and comfort. Is it boring? Yes, in the way that a perfectly functioning sewage system or a reliable power grid is boring. It is the kind of boredom that allows you to get on with the more important aspects of your life. It is a car for the man who has nothing left to prove, who knows that true luxury is not found in a badge, but in the peace of mind that comes from knowing your vehicle will do exactly what is asked of it every single time. If you are looking for a beast or an insane piece of technology, look elsewhere. But if you want a formidable engineering achievement that bridges the gap between the world we knew and the world that is coming, the Camry Prime is a remarkable choice. It is, quite simply, the sensible choice. And in an increasingly nonsensical world, there is a great deal of dignity in being sensible. It is a buy, provided you understand that you are buying a partner for the next decade, not a toy for the weekend. The king of the sensible sedans has not lost his mind. He has simply evolved. And for those of us who still appreciate a physical volume knob and a soft ride, that is very good news indeed.